Brought one along. I saw there were two
we don't want to be late. We have some better items in the back after the meetings. So welcome and thank you for being here. I have missed being in this complex. This is a beautiful place. This is a home away from home for me. And it's just beautifully set up, and I see the smiley face this morning, showered up, shaved, and ready to go. So I call this meeting officially to order. Let's start the meeting with the pledge. I'll ask Commissioner Menlove to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. As usual, we start the meeting with our introduction. We start with the commission first, and then we'll go over the UDOT family. Commissioner Menlove, would you please start us?
I'm Commissioner Rhonda Menlove. I live in Garden City and I represent Region 1.
Commissioner Luke Kramer, Commissioner Large from Salt Lake City. I just want to thank those wonderful snowplow drivers that did such an incredible job this week.
Commissioner Jim Evans, represent Region 3, live in Orem, and I'd say amen to that. I mean, not only that, but they don't even have enough. I think our director's probably out driving the plows because we were short employees. So thanks to everybody that's doing that.
Commissioner Kevin Van Tassel, Commissioner at Large from, I live in Bernal. Anybody, it's a little too hot. I would wish global warming would show up. It was 6 degrees there this morning and we're scheduled to be -6 Sunday, so. That's what an inversion will do.
Good morning, Commissioner Law. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of update about you?
Yes. Good morning, Donna Law. Is my sound okay?
Yes.
Okay. Donna Law, I'm a commissioner at large. I come to you live from my living room and my reclined position because I had foot surgery. So I'm so sad not to be with you today because I always love this meeting. And like you said, Mr. Chair, I enjoy being there at the complex with our wonderful UDOT team. All is well. Stitches come out Monday, so I'll be up and around shortly.
Thank you. We've been praying for you. Thank you for being with us this week.
Thank you.
And we excuse Commissioner Natalie Goffner. She will be joining us at 10 o'clock. She has some prime meetings this morning. And my name is Maggie Zanatti, joining you from sunny St. George. It is warm. I promise you that. It's going to be warmer, even 49. So compared to 10 that you had this morning, that is warm. Thank you. Now we would like to hear from UDOT family. Carlos, would you please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Carlos Braceras. I'm the Executive Director of the Utah Department of Transportation. And if we'll just go here, Diane, and Bessie, and then we'll come over to.
I'm Diane Josie. I'm Carlos's executive assistant and filling in for Heather.
Good morning, I'm Tessie Lords, and I'm an office assistant here at UDOT, and I'm happy to be here today.
Terry Hill, Deputy Director, Planning and Investment. Lisa Wilson, Deputy Director, Engineering and Operations.
Charles, you want to start it off?
Charles Stormont with Right of Way.
Kind of like this right of way to corridor preservation.
Ivan Hartle, Financial Programming.
Monty Aldridge, Region 4 Director.
Jordan Lee, Technology and Innovation.
Carrie Ann Noble, Technology and Innovation.
Eileen Barron, Communications Manager for Planning and Investment.
Drew Peterson, Operations.
Rob White, Region 1 Director.
Andrea Olson, Planning Division.
Ben Hewitt, Program Development.
Carmen Swan with Project Development.
Down here.
Brett Sider, Program Manager, Region 1.
Lisa Zundel, Traffic Management Division.
I'm Bob Pelley, I'm the STIP Coordinator.
Robert Stewart, Region 2 Director.
Shane Young, Internal Audit.
Sharon Hill, your Finance Director.
Wade Elder, Legislative Affairs and Policy.
Matt Palmer, Region 2 Program Manager.
Rob Clay, Region 3 Director.
Peter Asplund with Policy and Legislative.
Elizabeth McMillan, Communications.
Brett Potter, Communications.
Do we have any online besides whatever we have in person? No, thank you. And we would like to recognize also Brigitte Wendell from the Department of Federal Highway. You're going to be one all by yourself today? Oh, good. Thank you. Item number 2 in your agenda is public comments. And at this time, we have, if anybody is here, would like to come forward, introduce yourself, and you have a few minutes to talk about the agenda, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ricky Rankin Browning. I'm the president of the Utah Petroleum Association. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity to address you this morning. I want to start by thanking the UDOT team for their very prompt attention to the Highway 191 and related Uinta Basin transportation needs that we've addressed previously. We're incredibly appreciative of the $15 million that has already been allocated to these issues, as well as the work to bring in additional federal funding to secure broadband and improved communications, the paving of pull-offs, which has already been undertaken along that route, as well as the basin-wide transportation corridor study and the ICE study looking to address safety issues. On behalf of our members, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to engage throughout that process, and we're wholly supportive of the study findings that came out of that. We are working towards securing the additional necessary resources to implement those improvements and projects that have been prioritized with as much haste as possible given the growing transportation volumes along that corridor. So I hope you've had a chance to scroll through the study map that came out of that study. It's very impressive, a lot of tools and great detailed information. Again, we wholly support those findings. I also wanted to give you some numbers to keep in mind, just very big picture of the growth we see along that corridor. So looking back to 2019 and 2020, we had 0 oil trucks on that route, not few sand trucks carrying frac sand. By the first quarter of this year, we had 3 trucks an hour, 2 of which were oil trucks. So that means you've got about a truck every 21 minutes going down that corridor. Today, we've doubled that. We have a truck every 11 minutes today. By this time next year, we'll have a truck every 6 minutes. And by the time we hit summer of 2024, we will have a truck every 4 to 5 minutes. Those are very solid projections and hopefully just cement why we are addressing this issue with such haste and urgency. It's a rapidly escalating traffic volume along that route. We certainly appreciate your continued support and attention on this issue. We appreciate how quickly you've responded. This growth is a huge opportunity for the basin and the state in terms of jobs, economic development, state tax revenue, et cetera. And we look forward to working together to ensure safety and economic development opportunities along that route. So thank you.
Is there a question from Ricky? Yes, please.
Ricky, I had a reason to have an hour and a half at Duchesne yesterday. And I went down by the Strawberry River and just sat there primarily to count trucks. And in that hour and 15 minutes, I counted 17 trucks going both directions. And that is a significant factor. And again, hats off to the Duchesne station. They have done a great job this year. And I think that's part of it because Mr. Lazenby loves it up there. And he spends all of his time up there. But it's enabled those trucks to go through. And we've had some severe storms and they went through. There's been some chaining, but that's life in Utah. So anyway, it is happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. Now we have some emails that Eileen is going to read to us.
It's nice to see you in person.
I know, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today in person, but I do appreciate the opportunity to join you virtually when you're traveling. Commissioners, there was one comment directed to you this past month, and it comes from Sajil Shrestha. And he writes, or they write, greetings. While going towards Salt Lake City close to exit 319, around 1 mile away from 319, and I believe that's in the Centerville area, the road has many confusing markings that makes it so hard to follow the lane. The old white line and new white line are both present and can cause major accidents. It would help a lot if only one marking was present. Sincerely, Sigil. And that's all I have to report on today.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Anyone from online? Seeing none, we move on to the next item on the agenda, number 3. Bridget Mandel will present us the federal highway.
Good morning, Commissioners. Happy to be with you today. I'm Brigitte Mandel, the Deputy Division Administrator for the Federal Highway Administration. Ivan sends his regards, wishes he could have been here.
You got ice fishing questions?
No, he's doing something a little less fun than that. So I've got a few items to share with you today. The first is I have a new boss. Shailene Bott was confirmed earlier this week as the new 21st Administrator of the Federal Highway Administration. He previously worked for Colorado and Delaware DOTs and Federal Highway Administration under the Obama administration. Oops, sorry.
Anybody who gets unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate must be really good these days.
I've heard good things, so.
I've known Shaylin for 20 years. He's a personal friend. We're in very good shape in this country with Shaylin.
He's trained by Carlos.
He will not admit that.
Next is the status of our federal funding. As you might be aware, we've been operating under a continuing resolution. I guess just the latest is they did pass a 1-week extension in the Senate, and so we are hopeful for a omnibus bill maybe by the end of next week. Regardless, Federal Highway doesn't shut down as our funding is not affected by annual appropriations. On November 30th, OST announced a new funding opportunity for the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Grants, otherwise known as RAISE grants. That notice was updated on December 14th. It provides for $1.5 billion in funding for infrastructure projects, and applications are due February 28th. Next, the National Highway Freight Program, new guidance was issued. This replaces the 2016 guidance. States are encouraged to use this funding for safety projects such as truck parking and freight intermodal and freight rail projects. Q&As are included in the guidance, and as a separate initiative, OST is working to revise the guidance for state freight plans. Guidance was issued, also a lot of guidance coming out lately. New guidance was released for Section 504E regarding funding for training, education, and workforce development. The guidance highlights numerous eligible activities that were amended by bill and clarifies the definition of surface transportation, workforce development, training, and education. And I've provided a link to that. And lastly, innovations under Everyday Counts Round 7 were announced. They are listed on the screen for you. And a virtual summit is being planned for February of 2023 that will roll out the innovations and provide more details, examples of how you can implement the proven technologies. And that's it for me. You have a question?
Thank you. What does this mean for us in Utah? Specifically?
There's lots of opportunities. The guidance is really meant for UDOT or those that are implementing the funding. It does expand some of the opportunities for doing that, but it doesn't necessarily provide new funding. The NOFO for the raise grants is an opportunity to get additional funding. Ben will probably talk to that in a little bit because I know they've got some plans underway. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
So, anytime you call internally cured concrete epic.
Oh, for the everyday
Overtime
campus.
there.
Yeah. There's a lot of, the 504E guidance along with EDC, there is a big push to help develop the workforce, for state DOTs, for contractors. So there are some expanded potential there, to help educate.
Thank you.
Any question from Eugene? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4 on your agenda is UDOT scoreboard. Carmen Swanwick is on her way and she will be followed by Troy Peterson.
That's fine. That's you? Oh, okay. Oh, it's up there. Sorry. Hi, good morning. Carmen Swanwick, with Project Development, and I'm just gonna give a brief update on our project delivery status, since last month. So going through here, as you can see, we have about 61 projects that are forthcoming. In the next 2 months, we'll be advertising those. We have 7 past due at this point. A lot of those are really the same projects that we had last time, working through some right-of-way with the railroad and some coordination with the Navajo Nation. And so we're just kind of, working through those projects right now. A lot of them just agreements and some timing. So a couple of those, you'll see that they'll probably be on there until summer or maybe fall of next year. Getting down into the total cost estimate for projects, and this is within the last month. So we've basically delivered about $105 million worth of projects in just the last month. Down here into the advertising status, so you can see where our here you can see those 7. What is shown in red are those 7 projects that I mentioned previously. We have, right now, we're really kind of working on scoping. So in the future months, we'll be planning for next year. And so that's why you'll see a lot of the blue for the future projects and our scoping effort associated with those. And since basically 2021, we're about $1.5 billion worth of projects that we've delivered. Moving on down the project count. So we're going to get into the construction contracts now. It'll probably take a minute to load. There we go. As you can see, for December, we have, I believe there's 154 projects right now that we have in construction. We've paid out just almost $1.5 billion. And within those remaining contracts, there's probably another 500 million still forthcoming. Here you can see the trend. This is really standard. I think we're kind of in the same situation for this year. We were a little slower in contract payments in September, but really we're in line with what's to be expected in our contractor payments for this time of year. So this next chart is the contract award versus our engineer's estimate. So we're tracking about how well we're estimating in the bids that we're getting. Because of all the price fluctuations that we've seen, over the past couple years, we've really asked project teams to go back and reevaluate engineers' estimates, and you can see that they've done that. So we're getting good bids in comparison with the estimates that we have at this point. And that's what I have for you today, and I'm happy to ask any questions.
Go ahead.
So this last part here, so are we seeing any slowdown of the escalation, or is it about the same as it was a year ago?
A few things we have seen come down, like oil prices, we've seen come down recently. I think one of the situations, we don't know if it's just gonna maintain that or if we're just kind of in a fluctuation, so we are watching that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Morning, Commissioners. Troy Peterson, Operations. I'm going to provide a little update here on our strategic direction for zero fatalities. Okay, I'll touch on the fatality rate. Fatality rate right now looks like we're still sitting at 0.96. I want to mention that this graph we're currently looking at is only updated through October 31st. There's a little bit of a lag as they put the data together. So if you've noticed that in the past. And I always like to touch on our BMT just to kind of see where we are tracking on vehicle miles traveled throughout the year. And we're currently sitting at 29 billion vehicle miles traveled for the year so far, with a few more weeks to go. Obviously that's like I mentioned, a couple months behind. With that, I'm going to jump over here real quick and we'll take a look at our fatalities where we're sitting today. Currently, we're sitting at 312 fatalities. This time last year, we were, I believe, 321. So a little bit down from last year. A few more weeks to go. Hopefully that number stays where it's at. Like I mentioned before, we like to keep our target for the year was just at this time would be 267. So we're roughly 17% higher than that target for reduction. Not a good trend to see. Oh, I forgot to mention. Sorry. On the fatality. Sorry for the scrolling. I like to identify the vulnerable users as it makes up for the total of 312. We have 117 total vulnerable users, and I call vulnerable users, we're talking motorcyclists, pedestrians, and bicyclists. And we have of that 117, 52 were pedestrians, 15 bicyclists, and 50 motorcyclists. Sure, my math is right. Correct. Yeah. Suspected serious traffic injuries, a little bit higher, roughly 10% higher than our reduction there, where you can see from the graph. And just a reminder, our target we set is a 3-year average. We take a 3-year average and drop that by 2.5% to target to try and lower that number. And currently we're trending higher for that one as well. Total traffic crashes, roughly 7% higher than our reduction target. One interesting thing, I'm not sure if everybody saw this. I saw a report from AAA. They did a poll on unsafe driving behaviors recently, and the amount of people that admit to certain behaviors. And for instance, one of the things they were looking at was people that speed, or they admit to speeding more than 15 miles an hour than the speed limit. That jumped a significant increase over from 2020 to 2021. It jumped up 12%, roughly 12% more people admit to driving more than 15 miles an hour faster than the posted speed limit. Another interesting one that I was looking at talked about people who admitted to driving running red lights. That also, there was an increase of 10.4% of people admit to do running red lights.
What's the total? How many admit that?
That's the people that are admitting it. So I imagine those are
Not 10% admitting, it's over.
than what admitted to it prior to the 2020.
So maybe we're more honest.
Yeah,
One of the more alarming ones was where there was one I talked about people who were intoxicated, and right now the poll is showing that 23.7% people admitting to driving while intoxicated. So some alarming numbers when you look at what people are actually willing to admit. And what's going on out there. And I think if you see our fatality reports, it's pretty alarming. With those thoughts, I'd like to remind everyone about our 5 safe driving behaviors. And that's always to wear a seatbelt, drive focused, calm, alert, and obviously sober. So with that, that's all I have for today, unless there's any questions.
Troy, with more people admitting that they're driving intoxicated, have we seen arrests for intoxicated driving increase?
Yes, I don't have those exact numbers, but yes, that we do.
It would be interesting to see.
That's been significant.
Troy, obviously, we work closely with UHP to get these numbers and everything happening.
Correct.
I just saw a report this last week that they gave over 1,200 tickets for people going over 100 miles an hour. And, over 100. I lived most of my career in Washington, D.C. Virginia, if you do that, you go to jail. I mean, it's not even a ticket. It's jail time if you're going over 100 miles an hour. 20 miles over the speed limits, reckless driving, jail time possible too. I mean, I don't know if we've got stiff enough penalties here, but it's scary. Like Carlos says, the most dangerous thing you ever do every day is get out and drive your car to work.
Mr. Chairman, just going along Commissioner's thoughts there. This last session, we help support an effort by the public safety and the local law enforcement to increase the fines for speeds over 105 miles an hour. So just to provide an extra tool for law enforcement to try to incentivize better behavior. But across the country, there has been a very noticeable trend in, I'm going to say, risk-taking behaviors, where we're seeing, fatalities have gone up since COVID, and we're seeing greater speeds, more driving under the influence type of behaviors. And I believe, some of the things that people admit to and don't admit to, we seem to be taking more risks.
I have seen the increased law enforcement presence on the highways from St. George all the way to Salt Lake when I drive every time.
Yeah.
It's been amazingly increased, which is a good thing. Any other questions? Go ahead, please.
Just a comment. We've had, some pretty bad weather the last week. So on my little Facebook group that I've got, someone wrote, "Come on, people, the roads are icy, they're snow packed. Slow down, drive right." And the guy responded and said, "Well, you can't drive right when it's 75 and clear, so."
Yeah, the Wild West.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
Yeah, next item of agenda is item number 5, consent agenda. Good
morning, Ivan Hartle with Financial Programming. Our first item on the agenda, item number 5, is the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes the meeting minutes for the staff meeting November 17th, the area tour on November 17th, the commission meeting on Friday, November 18th, all in Bountiful, and then a list of projects. There's 3 projects returning funds that need commission approval. So included in our packet today, we have the staff update meeting minutes. Then the area tour minutes. Followed by our Friday commission meeting in Bountiful City Hall. Apologize for the quick scroll. Followed by our 3 projects returning funds to their respective programs. Back to our fact sheet. Our request today is a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Chair, I move that we approve these consent agenda items presented.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments, clarifications?
I just want one comment. That was particularly interesting truck, the bus tour along Miss Davis corridor. And appreciate Heather's marvelous job on the minutes. We didn't have to show up because you read it, you've got everything there. So anyway, thank you for that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
You. Any opposed? Everybody see except Commissioner Natalie Gardner, so motion passes.
Moving on to item 6. Item 6A-1 is the I-84, I-15 to SR-26. It's a funding addition from the High Volume Roads Program. The project scope of PIN 18232, where the I-84 from I-15 to SR-26 is to place a bonded wearing course on the ramps between I-15 and I-84. This will increase the skid resistance and provide a pavement preservation treatment on these segments. During a site visit, it was identified that the top 2 inches of the asphalt, the HMA, needed to be milled off and replaced prior to the placement of the bonded wearing course. The funding addition covers this additional work and also addresses the inflation-related cost increases we are seeing in the HMA prices. Located here on our map our request today is a motion to add funding to the I-84, I-15 to SR-26 project to the current STIP as detailed.
Yes, please.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Commissioner Gardner is excused. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item, 6A-2, is the intersection conflict warning signs on US 91 at milepost 10.25. It is a new project from the Transportation Solutions Program in Region 1 for $600,000. Due to an increased truck traffic entering and leaving US 91 at the Pisgah Mine intersection in Sardine Canyon, UDOT would like to install an intersection conflict warning system to alert drivers on US 91 when trucks are present at the intersection. Located here on our map, here at this intersection.
So because of that curve, it's gonna be before the shed or after, between shed and the.
It's north of
Like
north.
Is that a mine there, Rob?
Yes, that's a mine. That's the Pisgah Mine, and they haul a lot of material out of there and a lot of trucks.
Introduce yourself for the.
Rob White, Region 1 Director.
It's for people I'm on to.
And so let me get, what was the question again? Sorry.
Where's the exact location? Is it before the shed, UDOT shed, or after or in between?
It's going to be before the shed, most likely. Of course, the final design is going to determine the best location of that. There's also a bit of a vertical curve there. So site distance is an issue, and that's one of the reasons we're installing the warning system.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
Yeah, please.
You know, I want to give praise to UDOT in handling this situation. There have been multiple proposals discussed, and UDOT has come up with a reasonable solution that will look at increasing safety without an incredible amount of funding, which the projects that were looked at were very costly. So I think this will be a good start, and we'll be able to evaluate over time how effective this is.
There was a request for an interchange at this location, which is very expensive. And this will improve the safety of the intersection without having to spend the money for a complete interchange. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would move that we approve.
I'll second.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Commissioner Gogner is excused, so motion passes. Thank you.
You, our next item, 6A 3, is the Orem 800 North Trail, 400 West to 900 West program. The funding change or the funding requested would come from the Transportation Solutions. This is a project that has many different funding types, including some local government funding. The scope of the Orem 800 North Trail, 400 West to 900 West project is to connect two segments of trail between 900 West and 400 West and 900 West to the north side and south side of SR 52. It will connect Timpanogos Regional Hospital with the rest of the city to the east and provide a continuous path on the south side of SR 52 in front of Orem Junior High School. The project received increased funding in December of 2021. However, the price of concrete, labor, and construction costs have increased above the estimate at that time. The additional $335,000, and I apologize, this $375,000 is needed in order to advertise the project. It's correct up here in the table, but I missed the last, the change here. So 375,000 is the correct requested amount. This item was approved by the Mountain Land Association of Governments on November 28th, 2022. And one of the reasons why Mountain Land also needed to improve this is they also have funding on this project, as well as UDOT. Located here on our map. Our request today is a motion to approve to add funds to the Orem 800 North Trail, 400 West, 900 West project as detailed.
Chair, I know this area well. Things happen. Eventually, there's gonna be office buildings. The hospital's got that land. That's still behind a little bit. So this, in the meantime, for safety, this would be good. So I move for approval. That is fine.
Second.
Agreed. There's a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Commissioner Gogner is excused, so motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, 6A4, SR 45 Southam Canyon at milepost 14 is a funding addition from the Transportation Solutions Program. The scope of the SR 45 Southam Canyon on milepost 14 project is to mill and overlay the roadway with new pavement from milepost 0 to 14. The project bid opening was on December 6, 2022. The cost for several bid items, including mobilization, traffic control, shouldering, and pavement was higher than the estimated amount, resulting in the bids being 114% of the engineer's estimate. The bids received were reviewed and Region 3 recommends awarding the project. Tom has her hand raised. Okay. Commissioner Law has.
Go ahead, please.
has a
I
question.
do. I noticed this word in following items, Ivan. Can you teach me what mobilization means?
I can give you my elementary education on it and then phone a friend. But essentially, our mobilization is for contractors to set up at the job site. So when they're moving their cost of equipment and materials to that job site as they prepare to complete the project.
Okay. And again, as I've seen this in other items, it has to do a lot with the rural or the more distanced locations.
And there are some of their overhead costs are also included in the mobilization cost.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Monty. Monty was my phone a friend since he's sitting right next to me. Okay. Located here on our map, south of Vernal.
How many cars are using this road and where is the location? Somebody tell me, because I've never traveled that segment of the road.
You know where the power plant is south of Vernal?
Uh-huh.
That side.
Is that the one?
This looks like we're resurfacing the area where we had to put a bridge in since the bottom fell out.
Okay.
Yeah. We could, might have somebody look up the traffic numbers right now. Why?
It's near Skinwalker Ranch.
It's 50 miles to the west. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
I'd make a motion that we approve.
Thank you.
Second.
So motion in the second. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
The detours down in this section aren't very good.
Okay, still Commissioner Cosner's excused, motion passes. Thank you.
Our next item, 6A-5, is SR 18 milepost 0 to milepost 2 and SR 8 Sunset Boulevard. This is a scope and funding adjustment in the high volume roads fund. We're removing funding from this project. The scope, or we're proposing removing funding from this project. The scope of the SR 18 milepost 0 to 2 and SR 8 Sunset Boulevard project is to provide an 1.5 mil and fill with some deep milling in sections along SR 18 to repair distressed asphalt. SR 18 includes a buffered bike lane on the south side of the road. SR 8, I'm sorry, also includes a buffered bike lane on the north side of the roadway to provide safer alternative transportation along this corridor. This portion of SR 18 is scheduled to be widened in 2025 on a different pin 18212, with the potential of lane shifts and the city's interest in a more involved decorative median with the project team. The project team is recommending we delay the preservation portion of SR 18 to be included in the 2025 widening project. And that's a tongue twister paragraph. Located here on our map, SR 8 and SR 18. Our request today is a motion to approve the scope and funding adjustments to SR 18 milepost 0 to 2 and SR 8 Sunset Boulevard project as detailed.
Monty, would you mind giving us a little bit more detail since you have some communication with the city of St. George officials?
Good morning, Monty Aldridge, Region 4 Director. As mentioned, this project was originally funded for SR 8 and SR 18 for basically for a pavement project. As we began now analyzing the project and going through the development of the project, we decided that we had an opportunity for an all users aspect of it to add the buffered bike lanes on the SR 8 portion. And then as we continued that analysis on SR 18, working with our central traffic and safety folks, they did a predictive analysis of the benefit of having a median installed on that. And it was quite enticing, showed good improvement. The analysis showed over a 20-year period, the safety savings of about $9 million with the reduction in serious and fatal accidents of about 19 crashes during that time frame. And so we sought to move to have a median added in there. And as we coordinated with the city of St. George, they asked about doing, as opposed to a very simplistic back-to-back curve median, they were interested in doing a more of a landscape type approach. And given that amount of effort, it went beyond what we currently had set up in our project schedule, and we needed more time to develop that. And so that's the reason we're seeking to have this section of that SR 18 pulled out of this project so that we have time to do a further analysis. In addition to that, further analysis, we have another widening project, as mentioned, that's coming in 2025. And so this is basically the delay of that project, of this portion, for a couple of years to allow us to do a further analysis. We'll do some widening, we'll address drainage, and then we'll also install the medians and show a very good safety benefit in doing that.
So this will be from the St. George Boulevard all the way to South Main.
Correct, down to South Main. Yes, sir.
That's kind of where that path goes under the road.
Yes.
Correct. Correct. Currently, there's surface drainage on that west side, and that'll be addressed as well, and that'll help provide additional width that will help us install the medians as well.
Any other question while Monty is here? Donna, any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I would move that we approve.
thank you.
I'll second.
So motion and a second, and item number 5. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Commissioner Conley is still excused, so motion passes.
Thank you. Next, item 6A-6 is the US 6 SR 55 to 100 West in Wellington, West Wellington. It's a funding addition for high volume roads. The scope of the US 6 SR 55 to 100 West Wellington project is to provide a chip seal for the rural roadway. The additional $580,000 is needed due to the increased mobilization costs seen in delivering projects in rural locations to address inflation related to chip seal, oil, and other construction costs. Located here on our map. Our request today is a motion to add funding to the US 6 SR 55 to 100 West Wellington project as detailed.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
as I look at this map, this includes all of that new section that bypasses Bryce to the south. It goes past where the new way station is, clear south and right into Wellington. I'm correct in that.
Yes, sir. Yes, it does go down all the way into Wellington.
Okay, that road's starting to show us, ready to have a little treatment. Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any other questions? Comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Commissioner Conley is still missing in action, so it's approved. Thank you.
Next, item 6A-7, the US 6 Tie Fork to White River is a funding addition from the High Volume Roads Program. The scope of the US 6 Tie Fork to White River project is to provide a chip seal for the rural roadway. The additional $375,000 is needed due to the increased mobilization costs seen in delivering projects in rural locations and to address inflation related to chip seal, oil, and other construction costs. Located here on our map, these two sections. Our request today is a motion to add funding to the US 6 SR 55 to 100.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you for that. So, any other questions, comments from Ivan? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 6A-7 is approved. Thank you.
Our next item, 6A-8, US 163, SR 261, and SR 316, various locations. This is a funding addition to our low volume road program. The scope of the US 163, SR 261, and SR 316, various locations project is to provide a lane level and add an 1.5 inch asphalt overlay to approximately 31 miles of rural roadways. The additional $3 million is needed due to the increased mobilization costs seen in delivering projects in rural locations and to address inflation related to chip seal, oil, and other construction costs.
Mr. Chairman, remind us of the difference between low volume and high volume, the numbers, separate those two categories.
Wasatch Front and the rest of the state.
That's a great definition.
And with the, I can,
Just ballpark,
It's 1,000, I think it's 1,000
Yeah, I believe it's 1,000.
and then 100 trucks.
I believe it's 1,000 vehicles a day, or I was gonna say 250 trucks, truck, but it may be 100 trucks, but it's the number of the vehicles, 1,000 a day, and a certain number of trucks. I want to say 100 or 200.
Both of those categories put you in the high volume.
Yes, either of those.
Yes.
Oh, either.
Either of those, yes.
Stay there. Commissioner Law has a question. Stay there, Monty. Go ahead.
Yeah, Monty, hi. I can only see the back of you from where my camera is, but it says to provide a lane level. So again, can you teach me what lane level means?
Absolutely. One of the important benefits of doing these projects to our highways is to make them smoother, because a smoother highway lasts longer because it alleviates the impact due to loading of the tires. And so a lane level is to go through and apply a asphalt overlay to level out those high and low spots. And that allows us to do that with the lane level and then put a chip seal or the final seal treatment on top of that. And that greatly extends the life cycle of the pavement.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
Maybe a little bit of history and a little bit of acknowledgement of former Senator Van Tassel's efforts over the years. So it was back in 2006 when the department came to the commission down in St. George. We recognized we didn't have enough money to maintain all the state's roads at the same level, same condition. And we recommended and it was accepted that we treat the roads differently. And it was a high volume, low volume. We used a little bit different term at the time, and when we got the funding, we changed it to high volume, low volume. But what we needed to do is all those low volume roads, we were not proactively treating. We didn't have enough money to do it. And so it was important to keep the high volume roads in good condition because they deteriorate faster with the higher traffic and more trucks. And we would just react to problems on those low volume roads. You know, the regions would go out and fill potholes, mostly with their operations budget, not with construction projects. And we operated like that for quite a while. And every year we'd go to the legislature and we'd show the condition trends of those level 2 roads and what we projected them to be. And those projections that we gave the legislature, and then every year we updated based on actual measurements, were showing to be fairly, pretty consistent. And then Senator Van Tassel did not think that was the right business approach. And, he decided to really be the guy behind the scene pushing this idea of a gas tax. And in 2015, when that gas tax passed, it was for primarily 2 things: those low volume roads. And every year, the commission has been programming $40 million a year for low volume roads and $15 million of that 5-cent gas tax for bridges. And those were the 2 things that money was for. And it wasn't, it wasn't based on projects. It was change the condition of those assets. And as you've seen in our reports every year, those level 2 roads are now trending in the right direction. We set different targets for high volume, low volume, because they deteriorate at different levels. They generally, and so it was a business approach we were forced into, and we're now in a position where we can manage these roads in a much more proactive way.
Thank you.
And I just verified that is 1,000 vehicles or 200 trucks.
Is Senator Van Tassel
A little
still driving those roads?
Phone film?
No, I looked it up on the website.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And I will say that money has affected Region 4 more than any region in the state because they had so many of those low volume roads. And I think I said last meeting, Highway 89 is a different animal than it was 10 years.
So can I ask a question, Carlos? I appreciate a reminder of that background. Are we finding that those funds are adequate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I love that answer.
If I could, Mr. Chairman,
please.
I think it's our folks would always say they can use more money, and I think that's probably the right place to be in. Government should never have as much money as it thinks it should have. We should be forced to make hard choices, and I believe we are in a sustainable position right now with the funding that we see in terms of taking care of our assets.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, Natalie Gochner. I represent Region 2, Salt Lake, Tooele, and Summit counties. And I've been up on the campus of the University of Utah, and sorry to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Ivan?
Okay. Located here on our map, the southern end of the state. Our request today is a motion to add funding to the US 163, SR 61, and SR 316 various locations project as detailed.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Gardner, this is item number 8 on the agenda for your information. That we voted on. Okay.
I second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any other questions on the item number 8? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 6A-8 is approved. Thank you.
Next, item 6A-9 is the Cottonwood Wash Bridge replacement. This is an emergency project that we've been talking about since August of 2020 and 2021. Last month in our federal highway review, Ivan Marrero showed the additional funding that it had been received from federal highways to about approximately $9 million on this project. And this request is to add that federal emergency funding to this project. The scope of the Cottonwood Wash Bridge replacement project on SR 95 near milepost 115 is to replace the structure that was damaged during a high flow event. In August of 2021, the commission approved $700,000 of emergency repair to the structure and $5.3 million for the structure replacement. Federal emergency relief funds have now been allocated for the project. The addition of $3.4 million to the project is due to inflation-related increase in construction costs exacerbated by the remote location and increase in span length necessary to establish solid foundations on each side of the channel. Located here on our map, outside Blanding. And then these are the same pictures that you saw in last month's federal highway report, where the original structure, when the project was funded, and the temporary emergency repair that was done on the structure. Our request today is a motion to add funding to the Cottonwood Wash Bridge replacement project as detailed.
So
I'll make
Monty-
that motion.
So thank you for that.
I'm happy to second it.
Thank you. Monty, when is the timeline for this particular project to start?
They're working through design.
It's a good thing you sat close.
They're working through design now. I believe this is a 2026 project, I believe. I'll have to take a look and check on that, but they're working through design.
So the temporary emergency already is in place and it's okay, the people are using the traffic's no problem.
Yes, sir. Yes, the temporary shoring is in place and it's functional. It is, as you see there. In fact, our FHWA partners, the FEMA folks went out and took a look at this week before last and did a site visit and everything looks good.
Thank you.
Is this a low volume area, Monty? Just curious.
Yes, yes, this is a low volume, especially this time of year.
It's low volume and incredibly beautiful.
And I actually have another correction on the low volume, high volume. And I checked my text before I answered and I thought I may get one. And Kirk let me know that we removed the number of heavy vehicles off of the definition. And so now it's 1,000 vehicles per day, ADT, without a heavy truck limitation. And the reason being is that we never met the OR criteria of having over 200 heavy trucks with less than 1,000 vehicles. If that makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Good education, thank you.
And Cheryl, our structures engineer, just told me that they're waiting on the cultural approval. But right now, it's as soon as the design gets done, which is about a year. About a year.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 6A-9 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item, 6A-10, is an information only item. There are 3 project combinations located in Region 2. The the 78 South 6400 West Roundabout and the 78 South Widening, combining those 2 projects. The 700 West Reconstruction Phase 2 Carlisle Street to 3900 South. Or sorry, 3900 South. And the 700 West 33 South to 300. Try this again. The 3655 South, also the Carlisle Avenue project combination. And Foothill Drive 1300 East to Parley's and Foothill Boulevard pedestrian landscape improvement projects. These are projects that are currently being directed by Wasatch Front Regional Council. They've reviewed their project list and determined these projects can be, some of the funding years changed, but they were able to deliver these projects concurrently, saving time and putting these projects together.
Mr. Chairman, if I could interrupt, just the discussion about mobilization really ties into the, the rec, when we go and we combine these projects. Commissions previously approved them. If they're geographically close, type of work makes sense, then we can usually save money on mobilization costs by doing those combinations.
Thank you. This was for information only.
Information only. And that is all for me today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Merry Christmas. Item number 7 is the corridor preservation, and Charles Dorman is coming to present.
Morning, Commissioners. Is the text big enough for everybody on their iPads?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
That's good.
We have not had any materials for your approval in a couple of months, so we're going to do a few months of review of the status of our budget. So the first item we have here is the month ending August 31, 2022, with a balance forward of just over $45.5 million. Motor vehicle rental tax revenue of $637,000. Property management revenue of $85,000. The interest income is ticking up thanks to the Federal Reserve's actions in that area. I will admit there's pain in a lot of places with those rate hikes, but at least for the Corridor Preservation Fund, there's some positive news. Total revenue in August of $1.1 million. This year-ending fund balancing closing. This is the pennies and the couch cushions that are involved in various transactions from month to month, and the accounts that the treasurer manages with our funding. They balanced that out at the end of July, and it showed up in this August statement. I will note we had expenses of just over, let's see, $35,000, and we closed one transaction on Mountain View Corridor. This ended up being a little bit below what you had previously approved due to some property that had been dedicated by a prior owner. There's an old neighborhood out on the west side that had been approved and was never constructed, so there was already dedicated right-of-way that we did not have to pay for. Thankfully, our friends at Sitla understood that and didn't resist the reduction. They've been a great partner, very easy to work with. That leaves a fund balance of $42.5 million. We have 7.1 committed fund balance, taking all of that into account of 35.3. We'll skip ahead to September. Total revenue of $893,000. Total expenses of just over $46,000. Another transaction closing upon ISR 73, leaving a fund balance of just under 42.4. Factoring in the 6.2 that's obligated, leaves a fund balance of 36.186. Jumping to the next month, if there are questions, please let me know. I'm happy to slow down, but this is the last one we had available to meet the agenda deadline. Balance forward of 42.4 million, just under that. Rental tax is ticking up. I think it's really hot in August and we don't have quite as much tourism. Thankfully, it's picking back up. I'm curious to see what happens with this wonderful snow. Property management rental revenue of just under 85,000. Again, you'll see the interest income is much higher than we're accustomed to. Total revenue of 1.15, just under that. Expenses of just under 25,000. And we closed another transaction down in Region 4 on SR 24 near Sigurd. This was a very modest acquisition that will allow us to straighten out one of our intersections when the funding is available. And it leaves a fund balance of just under 43.5. These last three are committed. I will say one, we're seeing positive movement forward with America First Credit Union on the park and ride, but there's still work to be done. The previously approved trade is encountering some legal challenges, and I've involved one of our assistant AGs to help us work through it. I'm cautiously optimistic we'll get through it, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And the sign relocation is it's in process. It's taking everything is a little slower on construction and supply side, but I expect all of those to continue to take a little bit of time to conclude. So we have just under 6.2 million obligated, fund balance of 37.3 million. And we have one item today. If that is approved, the fund balance would be 36.5 million and change. Scan ahead so you can see our fund tracking. Looks like we are developing a fairly consistent cycle here, depending upon what month we are in. And again, I would note from this, the interest revenue really does jump out at me, given the recent rate hikes. Are there any questions on the fund balance?
I'll just make the comment that, again, we're the only state that has this kind of forward-looking way going forward. Very, very well managed. And these rental on the backs of our tourist car rental vehicles has been a very solid source of revenue. So keep up the good work, Charles.
Thank you. We'll move into item 7A. This is an acquisition on SR 73 out near Eagle Mountain. I love the maps, so I will scan ahead. You can see this is a home along SR 73. I will note that my first review of this, there's no line on the home, so I was wondering why we were doing this. You may recall from prior corridor preservation acquisitions where we are. This is a nice high-level overview of how all of these routes tie into each other. And then you'll see that we've done quite a bit of preservation around this parcel. There is going to be I don't know if it's retention or detention pond on top of the Aldi's home when this project is constructed. So even though the footprint of the roadway isn't there, the water will be. The lot is just over 1 acre. It was built in 1999. It's a lovely home, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths with a 2-car garage. The Aldi's have lived there for just over 13 years. They are aging and looking for a lower maintenance home, and they've been unable to sell given the impending project. The property is appraised for $747,000 and will be used for the future widening of SR 73. And the Corridor Preservation Advisory Council has given a favorable recommendation to this acquisition. So our request would be you proceed at the appraised value.
We have a question from Commissioner Law. Go ahead, please.
Charles, I appreciated as you shared this project that you started with I looked at it and questioned why, since there's no line on it. So what that tells me, and I think that what that tells our stakeholders, the Utah taxpayers, is that you're paying attention in great detail to the things that come your way. And I appreciate the way you shared that with us today.
You're welcome. I like to think I'm paying attention most of the time.
Go ahead, please.
Last week, on KSL in the morning, they had, one of the items was about acquisition of property. And they were, the focus was, they're having the public hearings on 16 North Norm, but callers or texting, we're talking about all around the state, different projects, and it was interesting. I think Jeff DePay, Bob there, he did a good job on it, but people are interested to hear about, the process and how we do that. And of course, you only have the people call in that, you got messed over their mother-in-law or something like that. But I think that Jeff did a good job of trying to represent UDOT in that. I don't know if you heard that when I listened to that morning. It's interesting just that how they had that as one of the focus topics on acquisition of property and how UDOT does that.
Yeah, and the corridor preservation is obviously different than when we're under threat of eminent domain. But I will say, one of the things I learned from my predecessor is our acquisition process, it tends to follow a grieving process. The initial reaction is emotional and upset. And as more information, as we work through our process and they realize how fair they're going to be treated, it tends to improve from that initial reaction into a negotiation and eventual success. So
And the thing that really came out of the discussion part was like, hey, we have appraisals are done, and you do the same thing, when we do the, for the owners that say we want to make sure we're treated fairly, and they can go get an appraisal as well. So I kind of talked about that process.
yeah, thank you.
Looking for a
I
motion,
move for approval.
and I'd second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 7A is approved. Thank you.
I just have one further comment. This is just a very, very small part of what Charles and Right Way people do. It's overwhelming sometimes when you just see how much they're balancing. So appreciate the care given to this, which is reflected in all the other work they're doing.
No, I mean, to Commissioner Evans' comment, in the last quarter, we've closed almost 150 transactions with almost 100 different property owners. Many tens of millions of dollars of successful acquisitions to support projects. With
Item number 8, Charles?
Yes, we'll move into item 8. This is, do you want to see the text, or would you, is the map tells the story, if that's acceptable. I'll scroll down. This is a property exchange for, zoom out just a little bit. This is 800 South in Payson. I apologize that I didn't zoom out a little bit. If you cross this property, which is an Exxon gas station, the on-ramp to I-15 at exit 248 in Payson is right there. So we're very proximate to I-15 with this property. It's on the northeast corner of 800 South and 1270 West in Payson. We need to put in a right turn pocket here in the future to accommodate growth, and given the proximity to you can even see the beginning of the on-ramp here. Jackson's Oil is hoping to create another access on 1270 West, excuse me. And as we've been discussing this with them through our folks down in Region 3, we've talked to them about this existing access point and its location very close to that intersection. Access creates conflict, and conflict creates accidents. So this is a challenging access point. It's existing. We would probably need to close it in the future with their current plans and what they're working on with their convenience store. They're willing to close that now. They will convey to us this, it looks purple to me, this long purple strip of property to accommodate that future turn pocket. That's approximately 1,120 square feet. And they've asked if we trade this area of lawn totaling 2,430 square feet. On the surface, you might ask why, if the square footage is different, is this a value for value exchange? Well, what you'll see is they have 3 access points. They are willing to give up those 3 in exchange for 2 new ones, including a consolidated access point with their neighbor. So that's a significant reduction in conflict. It facilitates the new project, and losing an access point is a valuable property right that they are willing to give up in exchange for the transaction to the north. There's a park and ride lot here that will remain unencumbered. It'll stay there, so we're not impacting that at all. And so our request would be for approval of this property exchange as presented.
I move for approval.
I'll second that.
Okay. So motion on the second. If there's no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think 8 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Charles. Item number 9 is 2023 Internet Audit Plan Review, and Shane Young is on his way.
Thank you, commissioners. Can you all hear me okay? It's weird without a mic, but I know they're up on the ceiling. My name's Shane Young, Performance Audit Director for the Utah Department of Transportation. Last month, I presented to you 6 projects that we would like to work on for the 2023 calendar year. These performance audits were assembled by feedback from our senior leadership team, from our executive director, 2 deputies, and from an enterprise risk assessment we conduct each year. I know I answered questions last time about the projects. I had mentioned 2 of them are already underway. We're close to reporting on 2 other performance audits. We're finalizing right now on right-of-way surplus as well as on our quality workforce assessment. And I am here because by law, you as a commission approve our schedule for the upcoming year. So I am here to request that approval so we can move forward with it.
Mr. Chair, based on the information that we discussed last month, I'm very happy to make this motion.
Thank you.
I'd second the motion.
Motion is second. Any questions from Shane? At this point, we have heard this 3-4 months. So we are ready to see none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Commissioner Fleming was not in the motion. Thank you. Item number 10. You can see the Sheriff Hillier is here to talk about the new fee for grammar request.
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Hillier, Finance Director with the Utah Department of Transportation. This agenda item is to present a new fee that UDOT has proposed for GRAMA requests. GRAMA is a Governmental Records Access and Management Act, which I always have to read because I can't ever remember it. But essentially it is a public request for information and data provided by UDOT, excuse me. We have not historically had a GRAMA request fee, but significant interest in the Cottonwood Canyon EIS has started some high volume GRAMA requests that have overwhelmed existing staff, and we have been looking for extra help to respond to these requests. So it was determined that implementing a GRAMA fee would help offset the costs of these high volume requests. Utah code requires a public hearing for any proposed fee, so this form is providing that. And per Utah code, an agency can implement a GRAMA request, and it should be done at the lowest paid salary of an employee that could perform the request. Since UDOT has kind of a breadth of different GRAMA requests and we would just have one fee, we determined that $40 per hour is a reasonable salary range for this fee. So that's all we have to present.
That's information only.
Information only, public comment if any.
So, like, give us perspective in all of government. Where do we fit in making grammar requests?
Well, I don't know if, I don't know how we compare to others. I'm looking to see if, Jody, are you willing to try to answer that, or?
I mean, maybe that's not a good question, but I'm just wondering in perspective.
I would say that the volume of requests has increased significantly over the last couple of years. They have become much broader, and we have folks spending an awful lot of time on this.
And are they
including detailed questions about,
Sometimes it's very general, so
Okay.
that creates this very broad set of areas that we need to hunt through. The more detailed the request, the easier it is to fill.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Chair? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Oh,
wait, I do. So talk to me a little bit about how this fee would actually get implemented.
So if a grandma request comes in that exceeds our internal ability to respond to it easily, we would come up with an estimate of how much it would cost an employee to perform this request, and then the entity would be billed for that.
We would inform them ahead of time of what that cost would be. They would have the choice to whether refine that request to try to lower that barrier.
And then how do we actually fulfill the request? I understand now there's money to do that. Are we hiring contract people to do that, or hourly people, or what are the next steps regarding fulfillment?
Go ahead, sure.
You can probably
Would
answer.
you like me to do that? Yeah, I don't anticipate us being able to hire people to respond to these because we don't have much of a window to respond.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we have a very I'll say prescribed process and a section within Terry's shop that helps facilitate this, but it touches, when you're looking for records in a very broad request, it could touch, looking through 50, 100 plus different, individuals' documents for years.
Carlos, do you want me to add on? I know some of the details to
Go
fill in.
ahead, Shane.
Sorry, I'm a second pair of eyes on this
So
as we did
Shane,
a
go.
review on our grandma process, but there are governing requirements under 63G, which is the statutory compliance areas where we have 10 days to respond to every grandma request. And the fees are dictated by our assessment of how long it takes. And law requires that we don't charge for the first 30 minutes of any request. So, that's the kind of the reasonableness criteria, that if we can get it done in a short amount of time, even if it's longer than 30 minutes, we generally won't charge. But if it's in excess volume, if someone wants project records all the way back from who knows when it started, then UDOT would make that assessment with one of our attorney generals who represents us. And then we're not allowed to charge higher than the lowest qualified person who is going to process that request by law. So we're not allowed to all of a sudden charge $200 an hour because we don't want to fill the request or we feel like it's going to be complicated. Whoever is the lowest minimum compensated person, that's our rate. And then we estimate the timing, and that notice then goes to the requester. So they're aware that there could be a fee depending on the length. And it allows the person to then adjust the request to maybe not ask for such broad things, but to reduce it down. But all of them fill out a form that goes into UDOT because there's minimum requirements they have to fill out. So it doesn't just go out to an arbitrary entity or individual, and it helps us to distinguish who's a resident versus someone from the media or a journalist. So they're a little bit different treatment, but it's triaged up front, it's assessed, and then the fee is based on that calculation. And that's about as all I can expand on.
Is that enough answer for you, Donna?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so
Thank you. We have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when do they pay the fee? Before they get the work or before we do the work? When is that fee collected?
I've never collected the fee to answer that question, but I would assume it would be after because we really wouldn't know the hours until they're tracked and calculated to produce the request.
So we do, I guess my question is we do the work. And all of a sudden the bill's $1,500. Say, oh, we can't afford that. We're not going to do that. We're just out the labor, I guess. So
Well, hopefully that communication too is conveyed because again, we have the 10-day window to address and acknowledge.
So they could shrink it down to what?
That's the
Well,
hope.
we actually give them a fairly,
Yes.
under our best estimate of what you're asking us to do. It's gonna be 10 hours, $40 or whatever.
Yeah, we have a designated coordinator here at UDOT who will then work with the regions depending on where the information is. And that person does a great job of fencing the volume of the request and estimating how long that request may take.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think the point of the fee is not to be restrictive with information because we want to be transparent as an agency. But it's just, sometimes the volume of them, people don't understand that what they ask for is going to take us days and days and days to get it done. So giving them some sense of how big of an ask it is.
I'm not saying we want to restrict we want the information to go out, but I'm just saying we could spend hours and hours and hours and then all of a sudden, I don't. Yeah, and we're not gonna change that law. This is what it is, but I was just curious.
It's a reasonable fee. Thank you.
Okay, item number 11 is administrative rule review, and Lake Elder is coming to present number 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Always a pleasure to be with you. Happy holidays to you. This is another rule review, and this is R 926-3 Class B and C roads funds. UDOT has explicit rule-making authority granted in statute to carry out some responsibilities with the Class B and C road funds. Just so you're aware, or probably a reminder, most of you probably know this. The Class B and C road funds come from the Transportation Fund. The Transportation Fund is split 70-30. 70% stays with the state and 30% goes out to the Class B and C road funds, and it's distributed to counties and cities. We're responsible for distributing the funds. We also oversee fund expenditures. Those funds are supposed to be spent on Class B and C roads. There's a few exceptions to that. We also provide a system for the uniform accounting for the funds. So I'd like to highlight a few changes that we're making here, or that we're proposing to make. You'll notice, first of all, that the rule currently is about a half-page long. This makes the rule somewhere on the 6-page range. So you would think that, wow, you're increasing that rule quite a bit. But currently the rule refers to a document that it incorporates. It's B&C regulations document. And for the most part, we're just moving that document into the rule. And so that's why it seems like we're making the rule so much longer there. We are taking out some of the things from the document, not including them in the rule, background information, history of the B&C that just wouldn't be appropriate to have in a rule. Also removing some regurgitation of state statute and replacing those with statutory references. Okay, we also add explicit language regarding UDOT audits that may be done to ensure local highway authorities claim or use Class B and C road funds properly. We also clarify that a road can still be eligible for B and C road funds if the governing body gates or obstructs the road on a temporary or seasonal basis. We add a definition for circulatory alley. Alleys currently are not eligible for B and C road funds, but the legislature added circulatory alleys as a eligible B and C road fund expense. So we added that definition to our rule. Also want to highlight that in drafting this rule, you can guess that counties and cities would care about this, and we did work with them. I personally met with Peter Asplund. We met with the League of Cities and Towns. Our folks also worked with the Joint Highway Committee, and we reached out to the Utah Association of Counties as well. As I mentioned, this is a department rule, so no action is required by the commission. But we give that to you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to respond.
Quick question. Anything in the rules speak to population numbers used for the distribution?
No, the formula is outlined in statute, 50% based on population and 50% based on road weighted miles. So that stays in statute, and perhaps there's room to interpret that, but I don't think we're changing anything with the formula.
Like, what's a circulatory alley?
So a circulatory alley is a road that might go behind a subdivision of maybe condos where the garages are, and you can kind of circulate around and come out. You'd probably know better than, yes, Daybreak is exactly what the lawmakers were thinking of when they put that on the books, so.
So did you have great support from cities and counties? Are they supportive of this?
Yeah.
What kind of reaction did you get?
Great question. Really, there wasn't much reaction. They kind of said, well, this really doesn't change too much. It's probably more technical changes. And I mentioned to them that that was not our intention to make substantive changes to this rule. And so if they did find some, please let us know. Let's talk about them. And they were glad that there wasn't a whole lot of change. So, yeah, thank you for the question.
Question.
Yeah.
Would you please, for the last time, define the B and C road definition, like what is the B, what is C, and what is the D category of the road?
Sure. So Class A roads would be state roads, and then going to B would be the county roads, and C would be the city roads, and then Class D roads are everything else. And, you know, each of those roads classifications serve their different purposes, and generally the state roads carry more volume of traffic and connect regions and so forth, and the city roads often are providing access and to businesses and communities.
So who's in charge of Class D roads then?
So Class D roads generally would be the county that would oversee those. There might be some Class D roads in a city, but generally you're going to be thinking of county roads and they're unpaved roads, maybe dirt roads, those kind of things. You are allowed to use some of your B&C road money to maintain Class D roads. Might be a percentage mentioned in the statute of how much you can use. I don't recall that percentage, but you can use a little bit to maintain Class D roads.
Any other question from them? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job. Merry
Thanks.
Christmas.
You got a fun couple months ahead of you.
Looking forward to it. If we need to call in the big guns, we'll be talking with you guys. And so we appreciate your support in that area. I know all of you have some experience with that. And I'm looking forward to it. It's always a lot of fun. So,
That's the right attitude. Thank you, Lee.
That covers our agenda items that we have posted. We have some time left. Carlos is gonna give us some description of the governor's agenda, the budget items that we proposed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think most of you are aware of the process that we go through in state government. State agencies prepare a budget request. We submit it to the governor's office late August, early September. This flow has been consistent for going back, at least my experience, into the 90s. The governor's office then, there was a lot of back and forth working on putting together the governor's budget. And the governor just released his budget last week. And that then becomes the platform that we use to have conversations with the legislature. So, it's kind of like the second step in the budget process, and then we'll be working with our appropriating committee, IGG, to be help them understand what those needs are. And if I could, I'd spend a few minutes going through that if the commission has some interest in that. I think it was
Yes, please.
I think it's a very good budget proposal. We're very excited about it. And if I could, I'm going to share some documents here from my desk here because it makes it easier to work my computer. And I'm going to start with the strategic direction, which doesn't talk about the governor's budget just yet. So I'm going to come down here, and this is what you see Carmen and Troy presenting on when they do the, the performance metrics and the strategic goals. But I'm going to come here to funding, and I'll just click into, you can click into either 22 or 20 or 23. So we're working in our fiscal year 23 budget right now. And just a refresher for the commission, we have the Transportation Investment Fund. That's the TIF. Those are the sales tax dollars. And I'll give you a quick refresher on how these work here in a second, but just going over the different funds. So the legislature puts money into these different funds. So this is a fund that, I say, doesn't really have any UDOT people in this that we pay out of this. This is going towards projects. The Transportation Fund, this is the gas tax vehicle registration. I'll show you again. I'll dive into that one here in a few minutes. The federal highway money, this is the federal highway money. Again, this really doesn't have people. This has just projects. The Transit Transportation Investment Fund, this is transit projects programmed by the commission. So when you think about it here, the commission programs TIF, highway funds, transit funds, the rural transit money, and the aeronautics funds. So those are the different funds. And I'm going to just click into the transportation fund here. You can see it makes up 26% of our overall budget, which, last year you can see there was 1.8 billion of ongoing and 1 billion of one-time money. So that was a pretty big budget year last year. And so if you come in here, you can see it has revenues and expenditures. If you look at the revenues, you can see, whether or not you like the pie chart on the left or the table on the right, you can see where the different revenue sources are for the transportation fund. You were just discussing the B and C fund, and I'll show you that in just a minute here. But this is the transportation fund revenues. When you click over to expenditures, we have here on the left what we call our different line items. And so the legislature, when they go through the appropriation process, they take those transportation funds and they put them into these different line items. And what I would point out here is on the right, so I'll go here. So 24% is put into the highway construction line item. That is, again, no people. This is the portion of, this is the line item that the commission programs projects out of as well. So I'm trying to give you an idea of where the commission is doing their work at here. And then over on the right, based on your commission workshop last year, this is the way you decided to allocate those funds in the transportation fund. And so you've had a discussion today about low volume roads. And you can see those $40 million for low volume roads here. So you set 40 million in low volume roads, and then you pick projects within each one of those program areas. But what I wanted to point out with this graphic here as we start is the different line items, because a lot of our budget involves what we call line item transfers. So not new money coming into the department, but money going between the different line items, because the department, only the legislature can move money across line items. And so we have to manage, within our line items. And so like when you talk about where most of the people are in the department, this operations and maintenance piece at 25% of the transportation fund, that's about 700 people. That's our maintenance people, our construction people. That's what pays for the snow plows, the salt, and all of that. That's where we pay for and manage all of that out of there. And then you can see line item down here, support services. So that's like Shara's area. That's where, the administration people is. you know, myself, Terry, Lisa, that's kind of where we're sitting at. Engineering services, that's Harmon's and Ben's area. It's where a lot of the engineering work takes place in there. Region management. So if you think of the region, take out the maintenance and construction piece, most of their other costs are managed within the region management line item. And the legislature every year decides how much to put within each one of those different line items. And so I'm going to you can see the actual numbers here below. You can see how much was anticipated. Again, the legislature makes their best guess. They might not like me to say it as a guess, a very sophisticated projection. Natalie has been involved in this for years.
We call it a swag, right?
But she's been involved in this from different places, but it's really unique in, again, how Utah does this, and where it's really done in collaboration with the governor's office and the legislature. I don't think there's a state that I'm aware of that has both bodies working together to come up with what's called a consensus revenue projection. And so the numbers shown are basically estimates, and we are by intent language told to manage with what comes in. So basically, if less money comes in, we have to manage that, and we have to either slow down projects or pull projects back. And if more comes in, we're able to come to the commission and say, hey, we've got a little more revenues. We recommend these projects to move forward. But we're watching that. Shara's watching those, you know, what's coming in versus what's going out. And so we manage that very carefully, what we call our fund balance. And so while these numbers look very precise, at the end of the day, we're actually going to manage the actual revenues coming in. So probably way more than you wanted to see. But now I'm going to stop sharing that. And I'm going to go back here. I'm going to share the governor's budget. Governor's budget proposal. Let me put it up. If I can find it. Here we go. Okay. And I had hidden columns to make it easier, but obviously the hidden columns did not show up in the document I'm sharing. So let me just. Doesn't let you do it on the fly here. Okay. So let's just look here. So basically what you see here are, as we go down, all of these things in colors are basically mostly line item transfers. And so the one like on the top two here are ones that take place every year. This is for additional mileage. So as we build roads, like in this case, we built it with Transportation Investment Fund, we can use money from TIF in order to maintain and operate those roads. So we actually identify the actual, we call them surface areas, 12-foot wide, mile long, how many surface areas were added to the system. And in this case, the proposal is to move some one-time money and some ongoing money for lane miles added. And then the next one down is the same thing, but it's out of the Highway Construction Fund, basically. So the gas tax side of things. Rest areas, we ended up having our contractor walk off the job last year, who was managing our rest areas statewide. And we ended up having to go through a new procurement process, and that contract cost quite a bit more money. And so this is moving money from the Highway Construction Fund over into operations, because that's where we pay for that maintenance contract.
How many rest stops do we have ballpark?
How many rest areas do we have? Anyone have a guess?
Some are better than others.
Some are better than others.
I looked at Senator Van Tassel, who's been to every one of them. Just
we have a site on our website showing the rest areas, and I don't remember looking for a friend here. Chris Peterson, how many rest areas we have? You're a consultant, you gotta know that stuff. I don't know, I'll find out.
We talked about the EV stations.
We have a bunch.
Yes.
Thank you. For the first time, we've asked for inflation. because everything's costing more in our maintenance side of things. And this is the first time we've asked for this. And, you know, our budgets have been getting tighter and tighter, and the governor is allowing us to make that request. We're asking for additional match money for our SPR funding, our federal funding. We're asking to fill 2 more environmental positions. Right now, you've given us a lot of projects. Thank you. Our environmental pipeline has been a constraint in how fast we can move those projects. So we're asking for 2 more positions in there. We're asking for a position for grant support, civil rights, and money for technology and hardware, some of our system support. This is a big one right here. We have been given the responsibility to do capital development for a large transit district, UTA, but we don't have the people to do that. And we can't spend money out of the highway construction account to pay people to do transit because of the state constitution limitations. And so this is money that will help us deliver that program. So $3 million ongoing, we anticipate that's going to allow us to hire about 16 people. We asked for and received money for some folks to help deliver. We talked about the Trails program last month in Bountiful. And so some people to help deliver that program, as well as you can see the ongoing projects. We're talking $44 million for the Trails program ongoing, and $55 million one time. So it's unbelievable. The aeronautic.
Can I go back?
Oh,
Just-
please,
I have a
please,
quick
we're back.
question on UTA. The governor announced free fare.
I'll get to that.
Are you gonna talk about that?
I'll get to
Good, okay,
It's coming.
good.
It's-
I just wondered what that.
This is
that
this is all the line item transfer stuff, okay? So
Okay,
this is
okay,
the,
okay.
put this
All right.
under, other than the 55 billion of ongoing, this is no new money.
No new money,
Just
it's
moving it into
moving
a
it
place where
around.
we can use
Okay,
it, okay?
got it.
Aircraft operations, this is, they passed a law last year that put us on a trajectory that would say, you know, we normally pay for the O&M of the state aircraft out of the aeronautics restricted account. Legislature wanted to wean that off, and the idea was they were going to replace that over time with general fund. This is that amount of money to meet that need. The RUC funding, this is a technical issue, and basically we've gotten this through last year. It's allowing us to use money that's already in the account. There was a technical, I'll say, disagreement between the Division of Finance and the way the bill was written, and so here we are asking again. This is exciting. Additional IMT personnel. So Department of Public Safety came to us almost a year ago and said, we think it's the right time to move towards highway patrol enforcing Bangerter and Mountain View corridor. Because right now the local governments do those. They're moving more towards highway type facilities, and they wanted us to come along with them and do the incident management. So we do the incident management trucks. So we had proposed both roads. The governor's office said, let's do Bangerter this time, and when Mountain View corridor is converted to a freeway, we go into do the freeway. So this is a $900,000 of ongoing for us to bring, what do you guess, Lisa, five incident management folks on board by trucks and pay for those folks. Let's see here. So this is I'll just jump down here to the some of the stuff that the governor has in his budget. There's
Almost question.
Yes.
How do you manage the jurisdictional transfers? Like the rules sometimes that we have.
We do that on a case-by-case basis.
I know, but which budget were you talking about the transfer?
I'm not sure I understand. What transfer?
The maintenance of those roads that you take over.
owns
in addition to the your maintenance crew, isn't it?
Well, those then become, if it's, say it's a local road going to the state road.
Right.
That then becomes, they lose some of the BNC, but the BNC total doesn't change. We end up absorbing that in our operation and maintenance costs until we're able to show it as an additional surface area, like I showed at first. So there could be a year lag, between them, so.
So on that, is the middle mile fiber, is that the fiber that goes along like 70, like it's gonna go up Logan Canyon, or is that, what would the middle mile be? I'm just trying to.
Yeah, Lisa, you want to answer that?
Those are the projects that are listed in this grant application.
That'd be like middle mile, okay. And I've seen a lot of boxes going in up Rhonda's area there, but I just wonder if that's like middle mile.
Have we got an agreement with Nevada on
I'm sorry?
the Ivapaw Road, the maintenance? Is Nevada gonna give us
No.
the ability to do that?
No, but are you seeing that? Yeah, so that's down there a little bit. So, the governor's office, we did receive, well, we think we're gonna receive, Congressman, Stewart's office has put in an earmark request for 3 million, like 3 million?
Yeah, 3 million.
3 million. The governor's proposing this is to do maintenance work on that road in Utah, but you get there by going to Nevada. It's a county road. And we don't have money that is, can be, that's fungible to be used on that road. And so the nation has been asking for help for years on this. I'll point out that, the commission administers a infrastructure bank, and you give loans. There's an interest in expanding the use of that fund, basically creating another use. And you can see an additional $50 million of capitalization. And the idea here is behind to capitalize the bank to help with more greenfield expansion. So about 50% of our growth in the state of Utah, we need to have absorbed by growth within our existing urban areas. But there's an acknowledgement that there's still going to be growth in these areas outside of where there is infrastructure. And you can give right now loans for roads, water lines, and sewer lines. But there's an interest in expanding that more for water supply systems, power, so that we can help facilitate and help folks grow in areas that don't yet have the infrastructure in place. This came out of the what do we call that? Unified Economic Commission was one of the things that came out of that, and that's what this money is intended.
Carlos, are there already prescribed projects kind of in mind with that?
No, Commissioner Law, there are no prescribed projects. It has been, the conversations have been very illustrative about what it could be. This has been something that has been identified by, I'll say, developers as a place where they need help to help grow, and this is all going back around this housing affordability piece. What can we do to help grow the housing stock? And that's what this is around. There's going to have to be a lot of, I'll say, there have to be more definition on what this is going to look like. And I imagine that'll be during the sausage making of the session. One of the things that that stands out is the Corridor Preservation Fund. They want to put more money in the Corridor Preservation Fund. Representative Christopherson has made this something that's very important to him. And Representative Christopherson has a bill file open that will actually expand the use of that money to be even out beyond the Unified Long Range Plan. Right now, you can purchase properties that are contained within the 30-year Long Range Plan. He's interested in giving more flexibility to because they're not making more land and we're going to keep growing. So he's very interested.
This is really important.
This is very forward-looking.
This is critical, and looking at Cache Valley and looking at, I know the Wasatch Front is a huge That's where the major issues are, but looking
It's
into
a
the
microcosm what's going on in Cass.
Exactly. So, and this is a discussion that, we're meeting, we've started meeting, we held our first meeting, it was a great meeting. But this is critical. We're gonna be in trouble if we don't.
Carlos, can you give us a sense of scale? So this is 50 million one time.
Yeah,
And
if you remember
base of-
Charles' presentation, Charles, we had a balance of about 42 million. So we have a balance in the fund. The fund right now, if you start to look at the assets that we own in terms of properties, it's about $180 million, if I recall, is about the size of that total program.
I'm just gonna pine here for 1 second and say, this is such an appropriate use of one-time funds. I wish that we would also appropriate one-time funds to some highway beautification. So that's my opining.
Like that.
It's just that you've got all this money and you want to put it to a good public purpose, and we care about where we live and the aesthetics of where we live, and I would love a for highway beautification.
Well, I'm gonna put all my energy into this legacy trail project this year, but we can talk about that next year.
I'd love it if fellow commissioners wanted to join me in that.
Transit at the point. So if you recall, last year, the legislature appropriated 75 million for whatever the transit alternative will be at the point of now. It's gonna cost quite a bit more than that, and they know that, so they're putting another $100 million towards whether that, whatever that alternative is. And Terry's team is working with UTA and on the environmental document and on the alternative analysis. Spring, we might have some more clarity around that alternative. I'm getting the nod, so make sure I don't get too far off the reservation. Paul Road, we talked about that. Again, this is something the nation has been asking for many, many years. It's on the far, it's in Tooele County. It's one of their roads. They don't have the means to take care of this. It's so isolated out there. I can say, I'm gonna give the lieutenant governor, she went out there, visited, she saw the issue, and she's very passionate about this. So,
Kaleo?
I'm sorry?
Is this Kaleo? In that area? No?
You go south.
Here's the free fare transit. You can see $25.5 million. And this is statewide. So, obviously UTA is the big number, but there's 6 other transit districts around the state. 3 of them have free fare already, and this is to help the other 3 as well. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. There's members of the legislature that are not fans of this. Transit fares this is being discussed around the country right now. You may have seen some of the conversations taking place in DC around the bus system. A lot of folks see this as an equity issue. Folks also see this as a major air quality issue. And quite frankly, from a mobility perspective, we need to have more people making the choice to use transit. So this is where you see the coupling of the pathway system and the transit money is we need as a state, with the way we're growing, we're not going to double the lane miles. We need to be moving more people to not moving them. They need to make the choice to use transit. It needs to be usable for them. And if this can help do that, it would be a good thing for the state.
Carlos, so pilot project is to do it for 1 year.
Yeah.
Who evaluates?
Yeah, that's not clear. To date, Wasatch Front, working with UTA, have been doing the detailed study work on this.
To my fellow commissioners, this is a really interesting economic question. One of the big things that drives transit ridership is convenience and frequency. And when you take money out of the system, it hurts frequency and whatnot. And right now, our transit system's operating on weekends with a reduced service. So the tracks is every 30 minutes instead of every 15. It's really awful. You come out of a Jazz game and you sit there and you can wait 29 minutes in the cold for the train. When it's a known event that you know that massive amounts of people are gonna come out and could use that service. If you ask UTA about it, they say they can't get drivers. Anyway, so I would suggest that this is less an issue of free fares and more an issue of service quality and labor force shortages. And so I really would love those discussions to deepen and enrich in.
Yeah, this will be a very, like you said, this is gonna be an interesting conversation with the legislature. I've heard
Yeah.
multiple.
My husband and I at Jazz Games are actually taking tracks on Friday nights, but not on Saturdays because it's too hard to, it's just an awful experience.
So Carlos, I appreciate the fact that you mentioned the other transit systems in the state. So I'm thinking about our little cats in Cedar City, and how this might apply to frequency, capacity increases, and some things like that that could be helpful in our little county.
Yes.
Or I shouldn't say our little county, our fastest growing county, according to the good economist amongst us.
For the second year in a row. Yes.
I mean, if you recall too, on the work that we're doing with UTA on the double tracking of Front Runner, the goal is around frequency. And getting to, during the peak period, 15-minute frequency on Front Runner and half-hour frequency off peak. I mean, we're double that now. So we think that frequency is a really important piece as well. And then the last piece in here is debt payment. So basically, we issue 15-year notes. We haven't issued bonds in quite a while. I don't know offhand how much we have outstanding, Shara. Over $1 billion still. I mean, a good part of TIF, it's probably in the 45% of the TIF revenues goes to debt payment off the top before you guys get to pick any projects. So the idea is to kind of set some money aside to try to pay down some of those bonds.
Are they low interest bonds though?
Yes, they're very low interest, very low interest. So, Mr. Chairman, this is the work we have in front of us coming up at the session. It's pretty exciting. The governor's office, I think, has been pretty bold in what he's laying out. So it's I think very positive for transportation.
Very impressive proposal. That's for sure.
Well, and I appreciate the fact that so much is being looked at in the infrastructure area. I just am really pleased with that.
The last item of agenda is the commission reports. I will start from my right. Commissioner Menlo, do you have anything to report for your committee?
Yeah, I'd like to report a couple, actually 3 meetings we've held recently in Region 1 in the most northern part of the state. We had an excellent meeting talking about identifying western arterials in Cache Valley. As many of you know, Logan Main Street there are many issues there, and we met to discuss that as well and possibilities there. But Cache Valley leaders are looking forward and they're saying, what can we do to establish a western arterial that might reduce some of the pressure there and also look to the future. Also, Rob has instituted quarterly meetings with Cache Valley and for the first time with Rich County. And last night in the Rich County Commission meeting, the mayor was absolutely thrilled. He couldn't praise Rob and his team enough. And just for the ability to have a conversation on a regular basis, know when that would be scheduled, and so that issues can be addressed. And I know Rich County is very, very small population, but they're facing some interesting decisions that need to be made in terms of maybe some corridor transportation issues that are long range. But anyway, and I just really am pleased with the forward thinking there.
We're gonna have to schedule our quarterly meeting outside in December. It's a little cold up there.
Right, anyway, but it's been great.
Mr. Chair, I'll just report on the state's latest population estimates. It's the end of the year. We get new population numbers. I guess the world surpassed 8 billion in 2022 and Utah surpassed 3.4 million. As Donna mentioned, Iron County was the state's fastest growing county. That's a really hard thing to achieve. You have to beat out Washington County and Wasatch, where Heber and Midway are, and so it's unique. 40% of our growth came from one county alone, Utah County. We had 6 counties that had more deaths than births, so natural decrease. That's not a good thing. That was Daggett, Carbon, Emery, Garfield, Paiute, and Kane. But overall, a very strong population growth in our state, unevenly distributed.
Commissioner,
Yes.
I thought it was, and isn't our in-migration all of a
Yeah, I
sudden,
should mention
I
that.
think that's very
I should mention
interesting.
that. Thank you, Carlos. You know, so populations grow because of births and in-migration. They decline because of deaths and out-migration. Our typical ratio is about 2/3 of our growth comes from ourselves, our births, in excess of deaths. But for the last 2 years, it's been just the opposite, where migration has accounted for almost 2/3 of our growth. We've had now 31 of the past 32 years net in-migration to the state. Really stunning. And Carlos, I don't know if you do this, but you might. But there was a time in the 1980s where we had 7 consecutive years without migration.
Oh, I remember.
Okay, I thought you would. So, you know, it's not the case that this state never loses population to out-migration, but we've now solidly in the in-migration camp, and in the last 2 years, significantly so.
Just to build on what Natalie says, we're seeing a lot of migration down for expansion and for whatever else, as we've seen farther south in Utah County, farther south down to Salina and central Utah. And I'm very pleased about the governor's proposal to help the infrastructure look at that, because it's not just roads, but it is electrical power and other things. In fact, we've met with Rocky Mountain Power and others saying we need to really look at making all of these things work because of the huge demand and growth population. And businesses are, if you're going to do a business today in America, you want to come to Utah, you just stay away from the coast, do other things. So it's a popular attraction. I think that's a very smart budget proposal that's going forward. And I know there'll be a lot of negotiations as part of that, but thank you for that. The point announcement this last week about the next steps there, that's exciting. There'll be needs for us. I'm also involved in a committee with the NACO, National Association of the Counties, and it's really always so heartening to say to them, well, so what are you doing in Utah? And actually, I know a little bit about what's happening in Utah, and it's exciting news to share. So maybe next all.
Natalie, it's interesting still the group of people out here that we come across that think that they're going to stop growth. They think we don't want growth, we're going to stop it, and it'll run over them. And so all this planning has to happen. So we have the growth as we want it with transportation and water and all these things. But it's still interesting, the folks out there that just think, oh, we're going to stop growth, which we aren't going to just do. Mountainland, we continue to have our planning meetings with, they do a great job, Andrew and his staff there, and Rob and Eric come a lot and do those meetings with me as well. So we always have some of the issues that we've already approved with the Mountainland thing. So I just say they're continuing to work with all the local governments down there. And I appreciate being involved with them.
Wasatch Front Regional Council, after a meeting last month, met and approved the flying saucer collision up on the freeway to repair. Some said it's a dump truck, but I think it's a flying saucer for Skidwalker. But anyway, that's approved, so I hope that project is moving.
Commissioner Long?
I don't have anything to report on the aviation side, but I do want to pass along some kudos on the local front. You know, the growth that Natalie has described, I would think probably caught us a little bit by surprise here locally. But we are looking at, long range visions for transportation now with the county and the city. And it's been just so rewarding to see how the UDOT team is participating and listening and offering suggestions. And I just want to pass along some kudos to Region 4, both the Richfield team and also our local Cedar City people, some of whom at the conclusion of this last meeting, they jumped in my car with me and we went and looked, and we sat and looked at the lineup that's happening at the South Interchange, and we drove around campus and looked at what was happening. And, so we now have some new stop signs and some things like that. So I just want to pass along kudos to the people who are responding to local needs as much immediately as they can, as well as looking at the long range solutions and offering expertise that in local areas otherwise does not really exist.
Thank you for your comments. I did not have any CIB meeting this month of December, but we had a 1 hour emergency meeting for DTAC, which they asked for extra money to allocate it for the Purgatory Road. I think City of Washington, Hurricane, and COG is St. George also participate in that increase in order to be able to get the UDOT's approved. So that's the meeting. Commission, next meeting, it will be not in January, it will be in February. So you have the month of January off. February will be in the Harriman. So book yourself and schedule yourself for that. And of course, for the rest of UDOT families, it is Christmas. In case you don't know, you haven't got the memo. I hope that you're prepared for it. I hope your families are prepared for it. On behalf of commission, to extend our love and appreciation for all you've done for the whole year of 2022. The roads are safe because of you. Special gratitude goes to your families and your wives and your husbands, letting you be with us and share you with us. We travel a long distance to get here, most of us, and we see the roadways, we see the constructions all the time, and the families are working so hard to make it safe. So on behalf of commission today and our families, to you, may you have love to share, help to spare, and friends who cares. Merry Christmas to you all. With that, I would like to adjourn the meeting, unless you have anything to say.
Motion to adjourn.
You want to say anything about the after the meeting, what we're gonna do?